April 26, 1986, 1:23 in the morning, inside Reactor Number 4 of the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, a late-night safety test went terribly wrong. In seconds, the reactor exploded with a force powerful enough to lift a 1,000-ton steel lid into the air. But what followed was far worse than the explosion itself. As fires raged and radiation poured into the night sky, Soviet officials scrambled not to save lives, but to control information. They claimed it was a minor accident, yet radiation levels across Europe told a different story. There were readings so high that scientists couldn't explain them, and reports of secret research that vanished from Soviet archives. This is the hidden truth behind one of history's darkest disasters, the story of the radiation conspiracy at Chernobyl. Chernobyl's Reactor Number 4 was an RBMK-1000, a Soviet-designed reactor type that was powerful but dangerously unstable. It used graphite to slow down neutrons and water to cool the core. The problem was that under certain conditions, this design could actually make the reactor more reactive instead of less, a flaw hidden deep inside the system's physics. On the night of the disaster, engineers were running a safety test to see if the reactor's turbines could keep power flowing during a temporary shutdown. It was supposed to be routine, but the test was delayed for hours. When the night shift took over, they were under pressure to finish it quickly. To start the test, the operators disabled several critical safety systems. Then, they lowered the control rods too far, letting the reactor's power plummet almost to zero. To fix it, they pulled the rods out, far beyond safe limits. At that moment, the reactor became a ticking bomb. When the test began, the steam inside the reactor surged out of control. Within seconds, power output spiked to more than 100 times the normal level. The water that was meant to cool the core instantly turned to steam, blowing the massive reactor lid into the air. The first explosion destroyed the roof. The second, far larger, blasted open the graphite core itself, releasing deadly radioactive material straight into the night sky. Many of the workers nearby didn't even realize what had happened. They thought it was a routine fire. But as they rushed to the scene, they began to feel the strange metallic taste in their mouths, an early sign of radiation poisoning. What no one knew yet was that the radiation levels were so high that standing on the reactor roof for even a few minutes was enough to cause death within days. In the hours after the explosion, confusion spread across the Chernobyl plant. The control room was filled with chaos, alarms blaring, and men trying desperately to make sense of what had just happened. But what made this disaster so terrifying wasn't just the explosion, it was the invisible threat no one could see or understand. The radiation levels around the reactor were beyond comprehension. Instruments maxed out at their limits, showing readings of only 3.6 roentgen per hour. But that was because the meters couldn't measure any higher. In reality, the radiation was more than 1,000 times greater. When the first firefighters arrived, they walked straight into a lethal zone. Their uniforms offered no protection, and as they tried to extinguish the burning graphite, they absorbed massive doses of radiation. Many of them would die within weeks. Yet, despite these conditions, Soviet officials insisted that the situation was under control. They ordered the plant workers to stay silent, and doctors were told not to use the word radiation in their reports. But outside the Soviet Union, strange things began to happen. 2 days later, scientists in Sweden detected unusually high radiation levels in the air, strong enough to set off alarms at a nuclear power station hundreds of miles away. When no leaks were found in their own reactors, they traced the radiation cloud back to the Soviet Union. The Soviet government could no longer deny what had happened. But even then, they released only vague statements, calling it a minor incident. Behind the scenes, scientists were recording something far more disturbing: radiation readings that didn't behave like normal fallout. Some areas close to the plant showed lower contamination than regions much farther away, as if the particles had been carried or altered by something unknown. Was it chaotic weather patterns? Or could there have been secret military materials inside the reactor that changed the radiation's composition? The truth was locked behind classified walls, and the world would only learn fragments of it in the years that followed.
While radioactive clouds drifted silently across Europe, the Soviet government went into full denial mode. In the city of Pripyat, just 3 kilometers from the reactor, life went on as normal. Children went to school, families gathered outside under a glowing sky. The authorities said nothing. For 36 hours after the explosion, no one in Pripyat was told to evacuate. By that time, radiation levels had already reached deadly limits. Many residents later recalled seeing the night sky lit by a strange blue glow coming from the reactor, the lights of ionized air from intense radiation. When evacuation finally came, it was announced as temporary. Loudspeakers told people to take only essentials and expect to return in 3 days. None of them ever did. Behind closed doors in Moscow, officials debated how much of the truth to release. Early reports were rewritten, data was destroyed, and journalists who questioned the government were silenced. The Soviet Union feared not just panic, but global embarrassment. Meanwhile, foreign governments were demanding answers. Satellite images showed the reactor completely destroyed. The Soviet leadership could no longer hide what had happened. On May 6th, 10 days after the explosion, they finally admitted that a major nuclear accident had occurred. But even then, they downplayed the scale. They called it a localized event and blamed low-level engineers for the disaster. In reality, the design flaws in the RBMK reactors were known for years, but ignored to save money and maintain production quotas. When Western scientists analyzed the fallout patterns, they found something else suspicious. The radioactive isotopes didn't match those expected from a normal power reactor. Some believe this indicated that Chernobyl was being used for secret military experiments, possibly involving plutonium extraction for weapons. The Soviets denied everything. But decades later, declassified documents revealed that military scientists were indeed working at the Chernobyl site before the disaster. What they were studying remains unclear. The world was told it was an accident, but for many, the cover-up raised a darker question. What else was the Soviet Union hiding inside Reactor Number 4? After the explosion, thousands of soldiers, miners, and volunteers, known as liquidators, were sent to Chernobyl to contain the disaster. They worked in shifts of only a few minutes, shoveling radioactive debris from the reactor roof and building a massive concrete sarcophagus to seal what was left. Most of them were never told the true danger they faced. The cleanup operation was brutal and chaotic. Helicopters dropped sand, boron, and lead onto the burning core in an attempt to smother the radiation. But this mixture created another problem. It trapped heat, and scientists feared the molten reactor fuel could melt deep into the ground, contaminating the water table. To stop this, miners were ordered to dig tunnels beneath the reactor to install a cooling system. Many worked in near impossible conditions, with little protection from the radiation. Some of them later said they knew it was a suicide mission, but did it anyway to save others. In the months that followed, Soviet scientists began conducting secret studies on the effects of the radiation. They discovered strange mutations in plants and animals and cases of radiation sickness that didn't match known medical patterns. Some of the findings were classified immediately and never released. When Western experts finally gained access to Chernobyl years later, they found large areas where radiation readings were inconsistent, suggesting contamination that had spread unevenly, almost as if something else had interacted with the fallout. A few researchers proposed that unknown isotopes or experimental materials could have altered the radiation. Others suspected that the explosion might have released substances from classified military projects hidden beneath the site. Whether these were nuclear materials, advanced fuels, or even early research into directed energy, no one could confirm. The Soviet records that might have explained it were either destroyed or remained sealed.
Even today, the concrete shell, now replaced by a new steel structure, hides what's left of Reactor 4. Deep inside lies the elephant's foot, a mass of melted fuel and metal still so radioactive that it can kill within hours. But what exactly caused the reactor to behave the way it did, and what the Soviets truly knew about its experiments, are questions that remain unanswered. More than 3 decades after the Chernobyl disaster, many questions remain unanswered. Official reports have explained the technical failures and human errors, but the shadows of secrecy still linger. Some radiation patterns defy explanation. Some files remain classified or have mysteriously disappeared, and whispers of hidden military projects at the site continue to fuel speculation. Was Chernobyl just a tragic accident, or was it the result of something far more complex? An experiment gone wrong, or a cover-up hiding dangerous knowledge? The truth may be buried deep beneath the ruins, locked away in forgotten documents, or sealed inside the radioactive core itself. What we do know is this: Chernobyl changed the world forever, and the mysteries it left behind remind us that sometimes the greatest danger isn't what we see, but what remains hidden. If you enjoyed this video and are still not subscribed, please consider it, as it really helps me out a lot. Thank you.